nowadays, Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna live audience here in ISKCON Dublin. Hare Krishna, everyone online. We are continuing to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Like we started a month ago. There Bhagavatam, if you would like to follow, you can, that's our prayer there. Just to recap for everyone who's first time, the idea is just to read through the verses, through the purpose of Srila Prabhupada's. We're starting on the 6th chapter of first canto. A few minutes and we start. And the idea is to read through. We'll stop a little bit. It's not a class, it's a reading session. And hope you'll get the same experience as me. Hope you get the same experience as me. It's like that you start feeling that ocean of transcendental bliss of those words there, which are non different from Krishna. So the more you dive in and just read and follow while you're reading, and something incredible can happen. So we start. There are also these two sheets which we start with invocation. It's like glorification, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's called Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotra. And that's been written by Sri Sanatana Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And he glorifies Krishna's pastime in Vrindavan. And this part which we always recite is obeisances to Srimad Bhagavatam. So glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we can follow along in Sanskrit if you like. And it goes something like this. Sarva Shastra Dipiyusham Sarva Vidaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truth, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Pranam Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kali Vanto Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O light air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali, you are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pasnaya Prema Vakshaksharayate Sarvanda Sarvasegaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madhika Bandho Mat Sangim, Mat Guru Mat Mahadana, Mat Nishtara Kama Bhagya, Matananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayim atini chochataraka hanam chakata chinman premnahrit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we started to read on it was the last day of Kartik, a month ago, with the aim to keep on going and to finish the whole 12 cantos in 2 years. So we try to go regularly, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then from time to time we'll have like we do for the Mela, Kirtan Mela, we try to do some reading Mela and just get together. And maybe it doesn't sound so exciting as the Kirtan Mela, but it's extremely blissful as well.
The hours?
Well, we'll see about how many hours we'll start.
Sounds exciting.
So they do this in India, they do it around the world, they do the reading marathons. And I can tell you, it's something really, when you just finish the whole book in one sitting or something like that. It's like, wow, what I just heard. Incredible. And it ruminates in your mind and gets into your heart. That's what it's intended to do. So we'll just go and read, and you just follow along. It's best. It gets more, if you want more light. Yes, okay. So we're just skipping the Sanskrit and we do translation in perfect. So the chapter 6 is called Conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva. So we just heard recently, just a quick recap. Vyasadeva was despondent. Vyasadeva already wrote the Mahabharata, the old Puranas, even Vedanta Sutra, but still he felt an emptiness in his heart, even though he's actually incarnation of Krishna, the literal incarnation of Krishna. And so we saw Narada coming, just passing by, like always happens with Narada, and he saw him, and he inquired from him. He knew what's happening with him, but he inquired, and Vyasadeva said, well, I know, I realized things, but I'm still... He realized Brahman, so he was in Brahman realization in that stage. And then Narada starts telling him why he felt like this. Because he didn't sufficiently glorify Krishna and describe his pastimes. So then he inspires him to start writing this, what we're reading now. So this is kind of introduction to the... It's not narration of the pastimes yet, it's all beginning of Bhagavatam, how it all started. So this is just right in the middle of this conversation between Narada, which is his spiritual master, and Vyasadeva, who is Krishna himself. Translation of text 1. Sutta said, O Brahmanas, thus hearing all about Sri Narada's birth and activities, Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God and son of Satyavati, inquired as follows. Purport. Vyasadeva was further inquisitive to know about the perfection of Naradaji, and therefore he wanted to know about him more and more. In this chapter, Naradaji will describe how he was able to have a brief audience with the Lord while he was absorbed in the transcendental thought of separation from the Lord, and when it was very painful for him. Text number 2. Sri Vyasadeva said, what did you, Narada, do after the departure of the great sages who had instructed you in scientific transcendental knowledge before the beginning of your present birth? Purport. Vyasadeva himself was a disciple of Naradaji, and therefore it was natural to be anxious to hear what Narada did after initiation from the spiritual masters. He wanted to follow in Narada's footsteps in order to attain to the same perfect stage of life. This desire to inquire from the spiritual master is an essential factor to the progressive path. This process is technically known as Saddharma Pricha. Text number 3. O son of Brahma, how did you pass your life? So how he became so perfectly transformed into the spiritual body of eternal life, bliss and knowledge is certainly important. Sri Vyasadeva desired him to disclose the facts for everyone's satisfaction. Text 4. O great sage, time annihilates everything in due course, so how is it that this subject matter, which happened prior to this day of Brahma, is still fresh in your memory, undisturbed by time? Purport. A spirit is not annihilated even after the annihilation of the material body, so also spiritual consciousness is not annihilated. Sri Narada developed this spiritual consciousness even when he had his material body in the previous kalpa. Consciousness of the material body means spiritual consciousness expressed through the medium of material body. This consciousness is inferior, destructible and perverted. But superconsciousness of the supra-mind in the spiritual plane is as good as the spirit soul and is never annihilated. Text 5. Sri Narada said, the great sages who had imparted scientific knowledge of transcendence to me departed for other places, and I had to pass my life in this way. Purport. In his previous life, when Naradaji was impregnated with spiritual knowledge by the grace of the great sages, there was a tangible change in his life, although he was only a boy of 5 years. That is an important symptom visible after initiation by the bona fide spiritual master. Actual association of devotees bring about a quick change in life for spiritual realization. How it is so acted upon the previous life of Sri Narada Muni is described by and by in this chapter. Text number 6. I was the only son of my mother, who was not only a simple woman, but a maidservant as well. Since I was her only offspring, she had no other alternative for protection. She bound me with a tie of affection. 7. She wanted to look after my maintenance properly, but because she was not independent, she was not able to do anything for me. The world is under the full control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, everyone is like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master. Very nice analogy, eh? I really like this. Yosha Darumai. Yosha doll and Darumai made of wood. So it's like the world is under the full control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, everyone is like a wooden doll in the hands of a puppet master. Text number 8. When I was a mere child of 5 years, I lived in a Brahmana school. I was dependent on my mother's affection. I had no experience of different lands. Text 9. Once upon a time, my poor mother, when going out one night to milk a cow, was bitten on the leg by a serpent, influenced by supreme time. Purport. That is the way of dragging a sincere soul nearer to God. The poor boy was being looked after only by his affectionate mother, and yet the mother was taken from the world by the supreme will in order to put him completely at the mercy of the Lord. Text 10. I took this as the special mercy of the Lord, who always desires benediction for his devotees, and so thinking, I started for the north. Purport. Confidential devotees of the Lord see in every step a benedictory direction of the Lord. What is considered to be an odd or difficult moment in the mundane sense is accepted as special mercy of the Lord. Mundane prosperity is a kind of material fever, and by the grace of the Lord, the temperature of this material fever is great, and spiritual health is obtained step by step. Mundane people misunderstand it. Text number 11. After my departure, I passed through many flourishing metropolises, towns, villages, animal farms, mines, agricultural lands, valleys, flower gardens, nursery gardens, and natural forests. Purport. Man's activities in mining, farming, industries, gardening, etc. were all on the same scale as they are now, even previous to the present creation, and the same activities will remain as they are, even in the next creation. After many hundreds of millions of years, one creation is started by the law of nature, and the history of the universe repeats itself practically in the same way. The mundane wranglers waste time with archaeological excavations without searching into the vital necessities of life. After getting an impetus in spiritual life, Sri Narada Muni, even though a mere child, did not waste time for a single moment in economic development, although he passed towns and villages, mines and industries. He continually went on to progressive spiritual emancipation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the repetition of history which happened some hundreds of millions of years ago. As it is said herein, only the most important factors of history are picked up to be recorded in this transcendental literature. Text 12. I passed through hills and mountains full of reservoirs of various minerals like gold, silver, and copper, and through tracts of land with reservoirs of water filled with beautiful lotus flowers, fit for the denizens of heaven, decorated with bewildered bees and singing birds. 13. I then passed along through many forests and rushes, bamboo, reeds, sharp grass, weeds, and caves, which were very difficult to go through alone. I visited deep, dark, and dangerously fearful forests, which were the play yards of snakes, owls, and jackals. Purport. It is the duty of the mendicant, Parivrajikacharya, to experience all varieties of God's creation by traveling alone through all forests, hills, towns, villages, etc., to gain faith in God and strength of mind, as well as to enlighten the inhabitants with the message of God. A sannyasi is duty-bound to take all these risks without fear, and the most typical sannyasi of the present age is Lord Chaitanya, who traveled in the same manner through the central Indian jungles, enlightening even the tigers, bears, snakes, deers, elephants, and many other jungle animals. In this age of Kali, sannyasa is forbidden for ordinary men. One who changes his dress to make is a different man from the original ideals. Is a different man from the original ideal. One should, however, take the vow to stop social intercourse completely, life exclusively to the service of the Lord. The change of dress is only a formality. Lord Chaitanya did not accept the name of a sannyasi, and in this age of Kali, the so-called sannyasis former names, following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. In this age, devotional service of hearing and repeating the holy glories of the Lord is strongly recommended, and one who takes the vow of renunciation of family life need not imitate the Parivrajacharya like Narada or Lord Chaitanya, but may sit down in a place and devote his whole time and energy to hear and repeatedly chant the holy scriptures of Goswami's Song of Dada. 14. Thus traveling, I felt tired, both bodily and mentally, and I was both thirsty and hungry, so I took a bath in a river, lake, and also drank water. By contacting water, I got relief from my exhaustion. Purport. A traveling mendicant can meet the needs of body, namely thirst and hunger, by the gifts of nature, without being a beggar at the doors of the householders. The mendicant therefore does not go to the house of a householder to beg, but to enlighten him spiritually. 15. After that, under the shadow of a banyan tree in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the supersoul situated within, using my intelligence, as I had learned from liberated souls. Purport. One should not meditate according to one's personal whims. One should know perfectly well from the authoritative sources of scriptures through the transparent medium of a bona fide spiritual master, and by proper use of one's trained intelligence for meditating upon the supersoul dwelling within every living being. Consciousness is firmly developed by a devotee who has loving service unto the Lord by carrying out the orders of the spiritual master. Sri Naradaji contacted bona fide spiritual masters, served them sincerely, and got enlightened rightly. Thus he began to meditate. 16. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna appeared on the lotus of my heart. Purport. The word bhava is significant here. This bhava stage is attained after one has a transcendental affection for the Lord. The first initial stage is called shraddha, or a liking for the Supreme Lord. And in order to increase that liking, one has to associate with pure devotees of the Lord. The third stage is to practice the rules and regulations of devotional service. This will dissipate all sorts of misgivings, all personal deficiencies that hamper progress in devotional service. When all misgivings and personal deficiencies are removed, there is a standard fate in transcendental matter, and the taste for it increases in greater proportion. This stage leads to attraction, and after this there is bhava, or the prior stage of unalloyed love of God. Although about different stages of development of transcendental love, being the eyes of a devotee is an automatic reaction, and because Sri Narada Muni in his previous birth attained that stage very quickly after his departure from home, it was quite possible for him to perceive the actual presence of the Lord, which he tangibly experienced by his developed spiritual senses without material tinge. 17. O Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord. Purport. Spiritual feelings of happiness and intense ecstasies have no mundane comparison. Therefore, it is very difficult to give expression to such feelings. We can just have a glimpse of such ecstasy in the words of Sri Narada Muni. Each and every part of the body or senses has its particular function. After seeing the Lord, all the senses become fully awakened to render service unto the Lord, because in the liberated state, the senses are fully efficient in serving the Lord. As such, in that transcendental ecstasy, it so happened that the senses became separately enlivened to serve the Lord. This being so, Narada Muni lost himself in seeing both himself and the Lord simultaneously. 18. The transcendental form of the Lord, as it is, satisfies the mind's desire and at once erases all mental incongruities. Upon losing that form, I suddenly got up, being perturbed, as is usually when one loses that which is desirable. Purport. That the Lord is not formless is experienced by Narada Muni. But his form is completely different from all forms of our material experience. For the whole duration of our life, we go see different forms in the material world, but none of them just apt to satisfy the mind, nor can any one of them banish all perturbance of the mind. These are the special features of the transcendental form of the Lord, and one who has once seen one is not satisfied with anything else. No form in the material world can any longer satisfy the seer. That the Lord is formless or impersonal means that he has nothing like a material form, or is not like any material personality. As spiritual beings, having eternal relations with the transcendental form of the Lord, we are, life after life, searching after that form of the Lord, and we are not satisfied by any other form of material appeasement. Narada Muni got a glimpse of this, but having not seen it again, he became perturbed and stood up all of a sudden to search it out. What we desire life after life was obtained by Narada Muni, and losing sight of him again was certainly a great shock for him. It's very nice from this, all these purports, verses and purports. It's being many times quoted or referred to, this part. Prabhupada explains about that everyone is searching for that form. That, just here that after that nothing else will be worth seeing. Everything else will lose its meaning, because that's the summum bonum, or the ultimate what everyone is looking after. Because in materially things are limited, they have limitations. They die, they dwindle, they disappear. They don't give any more same feeling or attraction. You get, but then you lose, or you lose the interest. So all of that, but nothing of that is in Krishna, is in ultimate personality. It's somewhere else. It's also explained that it's in the Shastra that all that attraction and all that eating and relationship increases. It's not like materially you get to a certain point and then start decreasing. Right? It can go. Desire is to go on and more and more. That's natural in anything. But it's not so. We just never found anything. Even if we can try to search, and everyone is searching and having their own journey. But there were millions of others who went through and they never found in a mundane world. And then it leads to all sorts of illusionment and intoxications and different sorts of stuff for the mind to be focused on something. So Narada now here experienced it, and for us, and even Narada is like a great sage. he only saw a Lord for a little while, just a little bit, and he never saw him again. Never saw it again. It's quite interesting. So it can be just, and it's mentioned also before that. One just need to see it just a little bit. It can be for a split second and everything is just, but we have, sometimes I think it's not, okay, maybe if I won't see it, it shouldn't destroy the faith or it's also been explained, it's not going to happen to everyone, it's going to see. It's like a special mercy for a special reason. Our part is, for majority, is widely said in the Bhagavatam, which is there's its rules and regulations. And by that, the mercy also comes. There's a mercy of different forms, different kinds. And the most sure kind of mercy is mercy that comes from following the regulations. That special kind of mercy, that's here. It's special personalities, like Narada also already chosen like that. And we can try with our endeavors, dedications. I have one request. It's beside this now, like usually when we started, I know now it's a really busy time, and we started reading with John. John is not here, busy. Manus here also is away. Tina is also away. So you see it's empty. There was a few others, Sutan to go. Service to do. I have to go back to the restaurant. In order not to here, maybe Danny, would you this week? Would you be okay with reading for the?
I don't know. I can explain as good as you. All that try to read is.
Usually I avoid explaining. I don't explain because Prabhupada explains a lot. We just maybe repeat what we heard, which really stuck something. You know, that's all. But I just wanted to go on and this so we can go maybe 10, 15 more verses or whatever, and then let me know, and I come back here.
Is it okay to know?
But let me know. You'll see because it'll be on. I'll have it.
Well, anyway, I can do how long you want me to go forward?
Still 7:30.
7:30.
So you.
It's half an hour.
Yeah.
I can try to do that. Oh, excuse me if I'm.
You're more than competent. That's Krishna said you here. There's no other reason. You can use that, and I shall come at 7:30 and just stop.
Okay.
Wait, stop. So.
Okay.
I just use here to see if there's something happening, and you can see yourself.
Okay.
It will be a few seconds. Maybe like.
Okay. Good evening, everybody.
Okay, Danny with you.
It's my first time doing anything like that, so hopefully we'll do okay. So where do we start now? Oh yeah, we're going here, yeah?
Yeah. Translations.
Right. Text 19. I desire to see again the transcendental form of the Lord, but despite my attempts to concentrate upon the heart, with energies to view the form again, I could not see him anymore, and thus, dissatisfied, I was very much aggrieved. There is no mechanical process to see the form of the Lord. It completely depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. You cannot demand the Lord to be present before your vision, just as we cannot demand the sun to rise whenever we like. The sun rises out of his own accord. Also, the Lord is pleased to be present out of his causeless mercy. One should simply await the opportune moment and go on discharging his prescribed duty in devotional service of the Lord. Narada Muni thought that the Lord could be seen again by the same mechanical process which was successful in the first attempt, but in spite of this utmost endeavor, he could not make second attempt successful. The Lord is completely independent of all obligations. He will be bound up by the tie of the unalloyed devotion, nor is he visible or perceivable by our material senses. When he pleases, being satisfied with a sincere attempt of devotional service, depending completely on the mercy of the Lord, then he may be seen out of his own accord. Text 20. Seeing my attempts that lonely place, the personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to all mundane description, spoke to me with gravity and pleasing words, just to mitigate my grief. Poor God. In the Vedas it said that God is beyond the approach of mundane words and intelligence. And yet, by his causeless mercy, one can have suitable senses to hear him or speak to him. This is the Lord's inconceivable energy, upon whom his mercy is bestowed, can hear him. The Lord was much pleased with Narada Muni, and therefore the necessary strength was invested in him so that he could hear the Lord. It is not, however, possible for others to perceive directly the touch of the Lord during the probationary stage of regulative devotional service. It was special gift for Narada, went for always and rapid in transcendental ecstasy. Text 21. O Narada, the Lord spoke, I regret that during this lifetime you will not be able to see me anymore. Those who are incomplete in service and who are not completely free from all material taints can hardly see me. Purport. The personality of Godhead is described in the Bhagavad Gita as the most pure, the supreme, and the absolute truth. There is no trace of a thing of materiality in his person, and thus one who has slightest tinge of material affection cannot approach him. The beginning of devotional service starts from the point when one is freed from at least two forms of material modes, namely the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance. The result is exhibited by the signs of being freed from kama, lust, and lopa, covetousness. That is to say, one must be freed from the desires of sense satisfaction, avarice for sense gratification. The balanced mode of nature is goodness, and to become completely freed from all material things is to become free from the mode of goodness also. To search the audience of God in a lonely forest is considered to be in the mode of goodness. One can go out into the forest to attain spiritual perfection, but that does not mean that one can see the Lord personally there. One must be completely freed from all material attachments and be situated on the plane of transcendence, which alone will help the devotee get in personal touch with the personality of Godhead. The best method is that one should live at a place where the transcendental form of the Lord is worshipped. The temple of the Lord is a transcendental place, whereas the forest is a materially good habitation. A neophyte devotee is always recommended to worship the deity of the Lord, Anjana, rather than go into the forest and search out the Lord. Devotional service begins from the process of Archana, which is better than going out in the forest. Into Vaikuntha by his presence only. He travels from one planet to another to convert men, gods, Kinaras, Gandharvas, Rishis, Munis, and all others to become devotees of the Lord. By his activities, he has engaged many devotees like Prahlada Maharaja, Dhruva Maharaja, and many others in transcendental service of the Lord. The pure devotee of the Lord therefore follows in the footsteps of the great devotees like Narada and Prahlada and engages his whole time glorifying the Lord by the process of jnana. Such preaching process is common to all material qualities. Text 22. O virtuous one, you have only one once seen in a person, and this is just to increase your desire for me, because the more you hanker for me, the more you have. Forward. A living being cannot be vacant of desires. He is not dead stone. He must be working, thinking, feeling, and willing. But when he thinks, feels, and wills materially, he becomes entangled. And conversely, when he thinks, feels, and wills for the service of the Lord, he is gradually freed from our entanglement. The more a person is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, the more he acquires a hankering for it. That is transcendental nature of the godly service. Material service has a situation, whereas spiritual service of the Lord has neither situation nor end. One can go on increasing his hankerings for the loving transcendental service of the Lord, and yet he will not find situation or end. By intense service of the Lord, one can experience the presence of the Lord transcendental. Therefore, seeing the Lord means being engaged in his service, because his service and his person are identical. Sincere devotee should go on with sincere service of the Lord. The Lord will give proper direction as to how and where it has to be done. There was no material desire in Narada, and yet, just to increase his intense desire for the Lord, he was so advised. Text 23. By service of the absolute truth, even for a few days, the devotee attains firm and fixed intelligence in me. Consequently, he goes on to become my associate in transcendental world after giving up the present deplorable material worlds. Serving absolute truth means rendering service unto an absolute personality of Godhead under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, who is transparent via medium between the Lord and the neophyte devotee. The neophyte devotee has no ability to approach the absolute personality of Godhead by strength of his present imperfect material senses, and therefore, under the direction of the spiritual master, he is training in transcendental service of the Lord. And by such training, even for some days, the neophyte devotee gets intelligence in such training, in such transcendental service, which leads him ultimately to get free from perpetual inhabitation in the material worlds and to be promoted to the transcendental world, to become one of the liberated associates of the Lord in the kingdom of God. Text 24. Intelligence engaged in my devotion cannot be thwarted at any time, even at the time of creation, as well as at the time of annihilation. Your remembrance will continue by my mercy. Forward. Devotional service rendered to the personality of Godhead never goes in vain. Since the personality of Godhead is eternal, intelligence applied in his service or anything done in his relation is also permanent. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that such transcendental service rendered unto the personality of Godhead accumulates verse after verse, and when the devotee is fully matured, the total service counted together makes him eligible to enter into the association of the personality of Godhead. Such accumulation of God's service is never vanquished, but increases till fully mature. Text 25. Then the Supreme Authority, personified by sound and unseen by eyes, but most wonderful, stopped speaking. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I offered my obeisances unto him, bowing my head. That the personality of Godhead was not seen but only heard does not make any difference. The personality of Godhead produces the four Vedas by his breathing, and he is seen and realized through the transcendental sound of the Vedas. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita is the sound representation of the Lord, and there is no difference in identity. The conclusion is that the Lord can be seen and heard by persistent chanting of the transcendental sound. Text 26. Thus I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeating recitation, ignoring all the formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembering of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are benedictory. So doing, I traveled all over the earth, fully satisfied, humble, and unenvious. Purport. The life of sincere devotee of the Lord is thus explained in a nutshell by Narada Muni by his personal example. Such devotee, after his initiation by the Lord or his bona fide representative, takes very seriously chanting of the glories of the Lord and traveling all over the world so that others may also hear the glories of the Lord. Such devotees have no desire of material gain. They are conducted by one single desire, to go back to God. This awaits them in due course on quitting the material body. Because they have the highest aim of life, going back to Godhead, they are never envious of anyone, nor are they proud of being eligible to go back to Godhead. Their only business is to chant and remember the holy name, fame and pastimes of the Lord, and according to personal capacity to distribute the message for others, welfare without motive or material gain. Text 27. And so, Brahmana Vyasadeva, in due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and who therefore had no attachments, being completely free from all material taints, met with death, anointing and illumination occur simultaneously. Purport. To be fully absorbed in the thought of Krishna means clearance of material dirts, of hankerings. As a very rich man has no hankering for small, petty things, so also a devotee of Lord Krishna, who is graduated to pass on to the kingdom of God, where the life is eternal, fully cognizant and blissful, naturally has no hankerings for petty material things, which are like dolls or shadows of the reality and are without permanent value. That is the sign of spiritually enriched persons. And in due course of time, when a pure devotee is completely prepared, all of a sudden the change of body occurs, which is commonly called death. And for the pure devotee, such a change takes place exactly like lightning and illumination, all simultaneously. That is to say, a devotee simultaneously changes his material body and develops a spiritual body by the will of the Supreme. Even before death, a pure devotee has no material affection, due to his body being spiritualized like a red-hot iron in contact with fire. Text 28. Having been awarded a transcendental body befitting as an associate of the personality of Godhead, I quit the body made of 5 material elements, and thus all acquired fruitive results of work, karma, stop. The purport. Informed by the personality of Godhead that he would be awarded a transcendental body befitting the Lord's association, Narada got his spiritual body as soon as he quitted his material body. This transcendental body is free from material affinity and invested with 3 primary transcendental qualities, namely eternity, freedom from material molds, and freedom from reactions of fruitive activities. The material body is always affected with the lack of these 3 qualities. A devotee's body becomes at once surcharged with the transcendental qualities as soon as he is engaged in devotional service of the Lord. It acts like magnetic influence of touchstone upon iron. The influence of transcendental devotional service is like that. Therefore, change of the body means stoppage of the reaction of 3 qualitative modes of material nature upon the pure devotee. There are many instances of this in the revealed scriptures. Pura Maharaja and Prahlada Maharaja and many other devotees were able to see the personality of Godhead face to face, apparently in the same body. This means that the quality of a devotee's body changes from material to transcendence. That is the opinion of the authorized Goswamis via authentic scriptures. In the Amanda-vikrama Samhita, It is said that beginning from the Indra Gota germ up to the great Indra, king of heaven, all living beings are subjected to the law of karma and are bound to suffer and enjoy the fruitive results of their own work. Only the devotee is exempt from such reactions by the causeless mercy of the Supreme Authority, the Personality of Godhead. Text 29. At the end of millennium, when the Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, lay down within the water of devastation, Brahma began to enter into him along with all the created elements, and I also entered through his breathing. Purport. Narada is known as the son of Brahma, as Lord Krishna is known as the son of Vasudeva. The personality of Godhead and his liberated devotees like Narada appear in the material world by the same process. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, the words and activities of the Lord are transcendental. Therefore, according to authorized opinion, the words of Narada as the son of Brahma is also transcendental pastime. His appearance and disappearance are practically on the same level as that of the Lord. The Lord and his devotees therefore simultaneously one and different as spiritual entities. They belong to the same category of transcendence. Text 30. After 4,300,000,000 years, solar years, is it right? Remember? Solar years, when Brahma awoke to create again by the will of the Lord, all the rishis like Marichi, Angira, Atri, and so on were created from the transcendental body of the Lord, and they also appeared along with them. Purva. The duration of the day in the life of Brahma is 4,320,000,000 solar years. This is stated also in the Bhagavad Gita. So for this period, Brahmaji rests in Yoga Nidra within the body of the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, the generator of Brahma. Thus, after sleeping period, when there is again creation in the will of the Lord through the agency of Brahma, all the great rishis again appear different in the body, and Narada also appears. This means the creations of the Almighty. He appears and disappears in his own transcendental body, which is without distinction of a body and soul, unlike conditioned beings. Text 31. Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I travel everywhere without restriction, both in the transcendental world and in the three divisions of the material world. This is because I am fixed in unbroken devotional service of the Lord. Quote. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, there are three divisions of material spheres, namely the Urdhva Loka, topmost planets, Madhya Loka, midway planets, and Adha Loka, downward planets. Beyond the Urdhva Loka planets, that is to say above the Brahma Loka, are the material coverings of the universe, and above that is the spiritual sky, which is unlimited in expansion, containing unlimited self-illuminated Vaikuntha planets inhabited by God Himself, along with His associates who are eternally liberated living entities. Sri Narada Muni could enter all these planets in both the material and spiritual spheres without restriction, as much as the Almighty Lord is free to move personally in any part of His creation. In the material world, the living beings are influenced by the three modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. But Sri Narada Muni is transcendental to all these material modes, and thus he can travel everywhere unrestricted. He is a liberated spaceman. The causeless mercy of the Lord Vishnu is unparalleled, and such mercy is perceived by devotees only. The rishis, as above mentioned, cannot enter into the transcendental world like Narada. This fact is disclosed in the Narasimha Purana. Rishis like Marishi are authorities in the fruitive work, and Rishis like Sanaka and Sanatana are authorities in philosophical speculations, but Sri Narada Muni is the prime authority for transcendental devotional service of the Lord. All the great authorities in the devotion follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni in the order of the Narada Bhakti Sutra, and therefore all the devotees of the Lord are unhesitatingly qualified to enter into the kingdom of God. Vaikuntha. Text 32. And thus I travel, constantly singing the transcendental message of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called Veena, which is charged with transcendental sound and which was given to me by the Lord Krishna. Purport. The musical stringed instrument called the Veena, which was handed to the Narada by the Lord Krishna, by Lord Sri Krishna, is described in Linga Purana. And this is confirmed by Sri Jiva Goswami. This transcendental instrument is identical with the Lord Sri Krishna and Narada because all of them are of the same transcendental category. Sound vibrated by the instrument cannot be immaterial, and therefore the glories and pastimes which are broadcast by the instrument of Narada are also transcendental, without a tinge of material inebriety. The seven singing matters, namely Shaja, Shauka, Ga, Gandhara, Ma, Madhyama, Pa, Panchama, Dha, Dhaivata, and Nishada, are also transcendental to specifically meant for transcendental songs. As a pure devotee of Lord Sri Narada Deva is always fulfilling his obligation to the Lord for his gift of the instrument, and thus he is always engaged in singing his transcendental glories, and therefore properly use the sound matters, namely Sha, Re, Ga, Ja, Ga, Ma, etc. in the service of the Lord by constantly singing the glories of the Lord as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Text 33. And the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart as if called for, as soon as I began to chant his holy activities. Purport. As the absolute personality of Godhead is not different from his transcendental name, form, pastness, and sound vibrations, thereof, as soon as pure devotee engages himself in pure devotional service of hearing, chanting, and remembering the name, fame, and activities of the Lord, once visible to the transcendental eyes of the pure devotee by reflecting himself on the mirror of the heart by spiritual television. Therefore, a pure devotee who is related with the Lord in loving transcendental service can experience the presence of the Lord at every moment. It is a natural psychology in every individual case that a person's like to hear and enjoy his personal glories enumerated by others. That is natural instinct, and the Lord, being also an individual person like others, is not an exemption to this psychology, because psychological characteristics visible in the individual souls are but reflections of the same psychology in the Absolute Lord. The only difference is that the Lord is the greatest personality of all and absolute in all his affairs. Therefore, the Lord is attracted by the pure devotee's chanting of his glories. There is nothing astonishing. Since he is absolute, he can appear himself in the picture of his glorification. the two things being identical. Srila never had a chance the glorification of the Lord, not for his personal benefit, but because the glorifications are identical with the Lord. Narada Muni penetrates into the presence of the Lord by the transcendental chanting. Okay, we got our main man back. Can you finish for me?
Thank you, Danny. Thank you for covering me. We can definitely count on you again.
Yeah, if I'm here.
Confident reader.
Sometimes.
It comes more and more confidence practice. And we finish with verse 33.
Yes.
33. So we did. We started with 6th chapter, conversation with Narada and Vyasadeva, and we read text from 1 to 33, continuing tomorrow, same time, 6:30, same time, same place, same online channels. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, everyone here. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki